The first painting I'm hoping people encounter is a kind of very early landscape. I think we know it as Sunset Between Hills. It looks like a landscape. We can see the hills, we can see a road, but we don't seem to be standing on anything, and the picture seems to trail off at the edges, which makes it not seem very real, almost like it's dreamt up. And what's sweeping across from the left to the right looks like one large arrow, which seems to be pointing at something. It's almost like a road sign, a very something from a 50s or 60s highway code book. And I've often thought of it as being almost like the signs that you get in art galleries, which are going to tell you the way out when it's burning down. That arrow seems to be, that's how we indicate where we're going and what we're doing. And I've long associated this very, very small, beautiful little painting with being an indication of where he's going with the next 10 years of his life's work. Another landscape, which is right next to that, which is, I think we've come to, it's a very early Welsh landscape. What we have is, as in the first one we talked about, standing stones. These standing stones are on, they're blue in colour, which you would imagine from in that part of the world. If we think about Sutherland as being very, very much an artist, well, he's working between the wars at this point, so we're building up to the Second World War. This is modern. This is British modernism, I suppose. But one of the things he's concerned with is not the modern world in this picture. It's not futurism of Wyndham Lewis or these kind of artists. He's painting the oldest thing he can possibly find, looking for that sense of the contemporary in the oldest possible things within the British Isles. And I find that it's a contradiction, what Graham Sutherland has long been known for saying, the precarious tension of opposites. But it seems to be an extremely sensible thing to do, because by choosing the oldest thing in the British Isles to paint, it's still the oldest thing in the British Isles to paint. So it makes his work extremely contemporary now. The yellow in this picture is just quite phenomenal for me. I mean, he doesn't seem to be bothered too much about mixing colours, Sutherland. It looks like he's just like a child. And it's very basic and very symbolic, I suppose, in a very, very crude sort of way. And I've often thought when he uses yellow, it doesn't look like a natural colour. And it's same with the yellow in this picture. It kind of oscillates between the kind of yellow a roadside marking van would leave to down the centre of a country lane, completely at odds with the environment around it. Just bold or high visibility vest worn by a man on the mending the side of the road or the railway or something. It's just not. It's not real. It's a dreamlike. It's a bit of, if it is real, it's a bit of the city dragged through the country, like humanity on its holiday. And occasionally, the yellow in his looks like a kind of jaundice landscape, which kind of is a symptom of an illness that's very deep, that's connected to your liver that you can't see. And there's something in Sutherland's work where he's dealing with the unseen world, with a world that's beyond ours or underneath ours or to the left of ours or to the right of ours, and that the landscape is in some way a pathology of that illness. It's visible sign that decay, that death is at work. And of course the figure on the left, what is it? Is it a figure? Is it just where he's put his elbow on the page and left a black mark? Is it him? Is it somebody else? What is it? It's just the humanity reduced to nothing but like a silhouette on the road of a jaundiced landscape. There's a lovely, exquisite little drawing that's known as tree roots. Very, very small, probably, what are we looking at, 8-10 inches. Quick drawing of some exposed tree roots, probably on an estuary foreshore or on a piece of a bank that's crumbled down, and the roots are just all sticking out. If you look at many of the works in the exhibition, you'll see this in many of the other works, but a little bit more faintly rendered, is this grid where he's divided the paper up into squares and then divided each square diagonally. And it's quite, I mean, in this drawing, it's quite oppressive. It's a grid put over the top of it. It's pressing the image down. It's almost like makes the image into something like a pressed collection of butterflies, something that's been sealed, prevented from living. And I know why you use those grids. Anyone who's made drawings and transferred drawings makes a grid to be able to transfer it or enlarge it. But the grid that he's drawn here far exceeds the demands of that function. Really, it's so elaborate that it makes me question and he's allowing it to be seen. Even in other works, major works, you still see it. Is he trying to say anything with that? Of course, we'll never know. And that's one of the great joys and one of the great tragedies of looking at Sutherland's work, is that you feel that he's got something more to say, but he's not showing it to you fully. There's a trio of mountains. The one you're probably looking at the moment will be called Study for a Mountain, but it doesn't look like a mountain. If I hadn't read the title, I would have assumed it would be a blistered piece of erupting flesh. The redness of the top of the mountain is so sore and rubbed and chafed. It looks like the very ground is bleeding from overuse and pouring. You can see it kind of this oozingness pouring down the sides like it's erupted. It's a volcano, it's a blistered sore. And this is, of course, one of the things that you start to see in Sutherland's landscapes. It's quite unnerving, really, once that has been identified in it. They stop having a relationship to the pastoral tradition within British landscape, but start to become more connected to the work of Francis Bacon. The exhibition concludes with 3 paintings which he made on his return to Pembrokeshire in the late 60s, and there's one painting which is made in 1969, which looks like it's. I don't think it has a title. It looks like a sun setting between hills, like in the first picture you see. There's lots of white paper. It's very, very quickly done. Looks like a note almost left for himself. But he's making it in 1960. It's made in 1969, as far as I can tell, and it's a time when he's starting to put away all the work which he did in the Mediterranean, all the exotic animals and exotic insects and tropical, what looks like exotic plants and flora and fauna. He's getting back down to the nitty-gritty of his early years. To return there, this beautiful little sunset, for me, just shows, and I think showed to him that maybe he should, if he'd stayed, what he could have worked out. It's almost like the Rupert Brooks, who was a corner of a foreign field. But I think every painter, every artist that I like, anyway, for Constable, for example, they choose a small part of the world and just explore it thoroughly. And I think that's what he recognised in this late stage in his life. The last painting in the exhibition, which was made in 1976, which is called Twisting Roads. It's a very, very dark painting. Everything in it looks black, and the sun, which is supposed to be setting, looks more like the moon. It's almost like the sun's been exchanged for the moon, or the sun and the moon have come together. Not so much shining on the landscape, but it seems to have collided with the top of the hill, and then it's pierced the bottom of the sun or the moon, and it's dripping like some orb, like some viscous thing, almost like a jellified eyeball, and it's leaking down onto the landscape, which is, I suppose, anybody that's been experienced British weather knows that I suppose we call it, what Thomas Gray would have called it, the liquid language of the skies. And I, as I suppose a younger artist, looks at not that much younger, I have to say, but would look at a landscape like that through the knowledge that in 4 years' time it would be dead. And I'm quite interested in the works of art that artists make in those last few years, like Bonnard's Pear Tree or Van Gogh's Cornfield. I don't know whether they're putting that weight into that work because there's something that we know, something that they know that time is coming to an end, or whether or not I'm doing that from the outside. But I don't think there's too much of the pathetic fallacy on my part going in there. It certainly feels, it looks like a major piece of work for me, and I think if you can save those major, if you have the power in those late years of your life to make major pieces of work, that's a sign of a life well used, I think. And what better way to look at a life's work than to think that your life's been well used?